A quick note before we begin. While Kelsey and Amanda enjoy debating for your entertainment, we want our listeners to know that Lit Vibes Only is an inclusive community that honors all tastes and respects all readers. Enjoy this episode. In order to make choices that are best for you, please note that this episode does contain brief mentions of abusive relationships.
Welcome to Lit Vibes Only, where we lit the shit out of books we love and hate. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Amanda.
And we're here to talk today about the very likable and controversial book, Twilight.
By Stephanie Meyer.
But before we get to that, Amanda, will you tell everyone where they can find us on socials?
Kelsey, I would love to. So if you are on Instagram, you can find us at litvibesonly_podcast. On TikTok, we are Lit Vibes Only Podcast. And on YouTube, if you prefer to watch your podcasts instead of just listen to them, you can also find us at Lit Vibes Only Podcast.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're doing that because I always get confused.
You always mess up the Instagram one, yeah.
It is not very clear for me. So with that being said, we like to start our episodes with the dub of the day. So Amanda, would you like to take it away?
I would love to, Kelsey. I feel like I'm still figuring out this whole dub business. But for those of you who are new to this podcast or to what the heck dub is, it stands for drink of the day, outfit of the day, book of the day. Awesome.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Yay. Okay. So my drink of the day, I decided to make myself some iced tea. So this is a wild raspberry and hibiscus iced tea with a dash of honey.
Yummy.
So fruity and summery and delicious. So that's my drink. My outfit of the day, I'm wearing kind of honestly, I don't know what color this is, like a dusty lilac. I don't know, t-shirt.
That's a great way to describe it.
Thank you. Thank you. Dusty lilac t-shirt and some cut off denim shorts. Basically my summer uniform. This is my go-to, jeans and a t-shirt or shorts and a t-shirt. And then my book of the day, I actually just started reading this morning and I'm super excited to start it.
Are you 500 pages in already?
No, I legit just started. So it is The Return of Ellie Black and it's by Emiko. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. Emiko Jean or Emiko Jean. And it is, shocker, a thriller. I'm really excited though to read it because it has 4 stars on Goodreads and is highly recommended. So I'm super psyched and I hope that I am shocked. I'm looking for some twists that are really gonna.
If you are shocked in that book, please have us read it because I actually want to be genuinely shocked on this podcast.
I was a little shocked for none of this is true, but apparently that wasn't enough for you. So I will keep you all posted. And if any of my other thriller girlies out there have read it already and want to let us know your thoughts, let us know. All right. Kelsey,
one thing you'll learn about Amanda and I was teasing her about being 500 pages in, but that's not unheard of for her. She's an insanely fast reader and I don't get it at all. And we'll talk maybe more about this later on the podcast about our reading styles, but I feel painfully slow anytime I'm next to her or with her and she's reading. I'm what the fuck is happening? How are you processing everything?
I remember we were on a plane to Vegas and we both were reading books. And I think I was just starting mine and you were already
literally just started.
And you were a fair distance into yours. Yes. I think I got halfway through the book.
Yeah, you surpassed where I was at. And I was okay.
By the end of the flight.
Okay.
So,
everybody has their own.
We all have our things. You love audiobooks and I am not a big audiobook person, but you can process information
in order to
really
stay caught up with you. I have to read audiobooks. There's no way around it. So my dab of the day, I have a chai I made at home, an iced chai with oat milk. How demure of me.
How
My
cutesy.
outfit of the day, also very mindful because it is a cozy day. It's just like what brand is this? Viore?
Oh, I
I
love
bought
Yuri.
this. I bought this for our honeymoon and to wear on the plane because it's so
Mm-hmm.
cozy. And yeah, it's a grayish and I have blue Viore pants that go along with it.
Oh, Yuri all the way. I love
They're
it. Their
so
stuff is
cozy.
so soft. It's so soft.
Yes. And then my book of the day, I've been reading Firekeeper's Daughter. This book is so good so far. And actually, I think it's more contemporary fiction.
Oh, okay. I might like
um,
it.
it's a real world stuff. No
Mm-hmm.
fantasy.
No,
I'm like
shocker.
trying
This is
to, yeah, no, it's not about it's not fantasy. And there's really, as far as I can tell, I mean, there might be a little bit of romance in here, but as far as I can tell, it's definitely not the main point of this book. It's
okay.
about this girl who lives on, oh crap, I don't even know what tribe it is, but it's Anishinaabe, I think. And she meets this new guy that's in town, and things start to progress from there. She's on her way to her first year of college. And in chapter 10, like this book already destroyed me. So I'm loving it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds like a Kelsey read then, if you're already like distraught and
Oh,
upset and crying.
yes. So good. Definitely pick it up. This is one I would be like, this book is for everybody.
Well, it looks like when
Read it.
you showed me, like, just put the cover up just a moment ago, it
Mm-hmm.
looks like did it win an award? I see a little gold
Yeah. Is that the
emblem.
Pulitzer?
I don't know.
Um,
I see a giant
Hold
P.
on. I know these are hard to read.
I
It's like
know.
gold. Award in Library Association. I can't even, and it's like around. It's not
Oh, I
like the
might have to
name of
like
some kind.
it won an award. It has a shiny gold sticker, so
Yes, it does.
so it definitely is a quality book.
Yeah.
Or somebody thought it was a
I
quality
mean,
book.
yeah, we could have an episode about awards, book awards for sure.
That's a
There's,
whole other
yeah.
thing. Whole other thing.
Uh,
Oh my gosh, but I'm so excited for this episode
oh my gosh. I'm like,
because
I can't wait to get into it. And I can't wait to see you so angry and like upset.
I'm gonna try to regulate my emotions.
Can you?
With this book, honestly, I should I promise nothing. I promise nothing.
So, Amanda, before we
Yes.
dive deeper into this episode, give the audience your shortest response. Is it a lit it or a quit it?
Like, I feel like this goes without saying, but this is like 100,000 billion% quit it. Like, I wish I had actually quit it and hadn't sat through and read the whole thing. And if it wasn't
But
for
you
this
were forced
podcast,
to.
I would not have finished it.
So
So,
sad.
yeah, short answer, hated it, absolutely quit it.
Thank you for your opinion. Many people disagree with you.
Clearly, there's apparently over 2 million people on Goodreads who gave this book a 5-star review. So,
Yeah, it's insane.
I'm still somehow in the minority, which is insane.
Kind of moving on. Oh, yes. Will you please do our lovely summary of this book?
I would, I was going to say I'd love to, but I really don't want to. Here's what I'll say, because this book and the whole franchise has been around, unfortunately, for a very long time. I feel like most people know the story of Twilight, so I'm not going to like do a whole long rambling monologue. And if you don't know the story of Twilight, more power to you, honestly. Like, good on
I
you
know
for
who
avoiding
doesn't,
this
though.
catastrophe.
It's a good.
So my like very brief summary, my like 1 to 2 sentence summary of this book is Bella Swan is the main character. She moves to Forks to live with her dad and falls in love with a handsome, mysterious stranger who, shocker, happens to be a vampire. And that is all I have to say about this summary of this book.
That's all you're going to say, Amanda.
Well, oh my, okay, so there's more vampires, and
At least I gave none of this is true, a true summary.
Because nobody knows. A lot of people might not know what none of this is true is about. honestly, what else do I want to say about this book? Yeah, it's just like
summary.
a lot of like age angst. Okay, so summary. Yeah, so she falls in love with Edward Cullen, who is a vampire. He's like,
This
I
is
don't
so
know.
hard for you.
I'm just so apathetic about this book, but also enraged at the same time.
Oh, here we go.
So basically, yeah, he is a vampire. He's been around for like, I don't know, 100 years. He lives with a quote unquote family. They're not actually related of other vampires, and they have all like pledged to be good little vampires. And instead of killing humans, they're just going to kill animals. So kudos to them. Yay. And I don't know, like Edward like saves Bella's life. Like she's about to get hit by a car in the high school parking lot, and magically he's there and saves her. And then she's like, that's suspicious. How did you do that? And it's just a lot of like, I don't even
let me fill in the blanks for you.
I honestly, I mean, by all means, but I also feel like truly anyone listening to this podcast knows what the story of Twilight is.
Perhaps.
So I like don't want to spend too much time getting into the finer details of the plot, because I do honestly think most people know. I'm not just trying to be like difficult. I think the
being
main I mean, yes, I'm being a little bit difficult. I think the main, I mean, there's like they play a baseball game in the woods, and like, you know, some other vampires show up that are like bad vampires because they do actually like eat humans. And so one of them obviously like targets Bella and decides to track her. So they're like, Bella, we gotta get you out of town. So she goes back to like what, New Mexico, I think, which is where she's from, or no, Arizona. I'm sorry, Arizona, where she like was originally living with her mom. And of course the vampire's not an idiot and like tracks her there. And then she has like this whole like martyr self-sacrificing moment when she's like, no, I'm just gonna go and like essentially let him kill me so he doesn't harm anybody else. And you know, at the very last minute, like surprise, surprise, Edward shows up and saves her. And then he like has to like suck the vampire venom out of her body, and it's like this whole thing for her or for him, because he has to like try and only suck enough so like the venom gets out of her blood, but he doesn't actually kill her. And it's just gross and weird and stupid, and I hated it. The end. If only.
And Bella does live, and they end up going to her prom together.
And she thinks like, oh, and she wants to become a vampire. Like she's so dead set on Edward making her a vampire. And she thought, instead of Edward taking her to the prom, she like weirdly thought he was gonna change her into a vampire that night. And so he asked her to get all dressed up in order to do that. Like, this girl has so many issues. I'm really concerned for Bella, like truly and deeply concerned for her mental well-being.
And I think we should be. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. Well, apparently 2 million other people think all is well in Fort Washington.
So it's funny. We have to start on a good point though, Amanda. Thank you for doing the summary, even though that was clearly painful for you. We have to start on a high point.
Do we know? Like, is there even one?
What did you like about the book? What aspect?
This okay. You actually like one thing, and I have the actual hardcover book with me. This book is I don't even know how long it is. I think it's like over 500 pages. I'm like trying to find. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's 498 pages. Okay. And the one thing I think my favorite thing about this book was that even though it was almost 500 pages long, it went super quickly. It was, you know, it was kind of, for easy, me, it was like because it was so horrible and so poorly written, it was kind of like ripping off a Band-Aid. It was painful, but since it was quick, it was a little bit less painful. So that is like literally the only thing about this book that I can say was a positive, is that even though it was long, it goes quickly. So if you do have a friend like I do who forces you to read this, know that your suffering will be intense. It'll be intense, but brief. That is what I'll say.
Thinking of all the characters, if you had to put one at the top, who would it be? And there's a reason why I'm asking.
Like the top in terms of what? Like the worst possible? Like the
most... rather like your favorite. I wasn't going to say your favorite because I imagine you don't have technically a favorite, but who is the least like
disagreeable?
Yes, exactly.
Unlikable. Oh, that's easy. Bella's dad.
I knew you were going to say that.
He is the only character in the book that I'm like, all right, you seem like a solid dude. Like, you need to care for yourself better because you're kind of a grown man child. But other than that, like, you seem likable and have a fairly good head on your shoulders, and you love your daughter.
He doesn't like Edward. He tries to keep Bella away from Edward. He's the only one in the book that has like a solid head on his shoulders.
Doesn't really do that much to keep Bella away from Edward.
But like, he doesn't like it, right?
I mean, she like introduces Edward to her dad. He's just kind of like, okay, be safe. I did not get the impression anywhere in the book that he was like really going all out to make sure Edward stayed far away from his
for
mommy.
sure.
Not, but if anything, Jacob's dad did for sure. Yeah, exactly. I don't think he did a really good job. If he really was concerned about Edward being a bad character and that was all he did, like, yeah. But it's fine.
So there's a huge movement where it's like Charlie stans where they're just in love with Charlie and he's the actual love interest in the book and movie. It's really hilarious. Yeah, there's like t-shirts about it. Like it's
I could get on. If I just stand any of the characters, it would be him. Like, he's the only one that I could like feel okay.
Yeah.
Giving some props to.
So starting there, let's start with the characters. Like, what were your thoughts of some of the main characters? Let's not go into like maybe the side characters too much, but probably Bella and Edward.
Yeah, I mean,
because I feel like we could be here for a long time if we went into all of them.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think obviously the main three in my head are like Bella, Edward, and Jacob. Even though honestly, he's not a huge character in this story. Like, he's still pretty minor. Yet. And obviously there's the rest of the Cullens that are in and out, which honestly were really hard to keep track of.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, generally, as you know, like, names are not my thing. Like, keeping characters' names straight is so hard for me. And
how do you like Justin Cronin books then?
I don't, because his characters are like distinct and well-formed and engaging. So it's like, I don't know, the entire Cullen clan, they're just kind of this like, the one I remember, honestly, is I think Alice. She's like the perky one who's always dancing everywhere and is like super graceful. I don't know. That's like she's always described as a dancer. The rest are just like this, I don't know, like amorphous mass of like quote unquote vegetarian vampires that are just unremarkable.
Let's get into it.
Okay, I think, before I get into the characters, I think what I want to first talk about is the writing, right? Because like, the characters are a direct result of Stephenie Meyer's lack of talent. And I remember within like the first 5 or 10 pages of this book, I legitimately felt like I was reading someone's high school creative writing project. It felt like someone was like, all right, kids, I want you to write a spooky love story and we're going to spend the week working on it. And then we're going to read it for the class. That was the level of writing ability that was very clear to me right off the bat. And there's this one, and I have my notes. I have my notes here, but there's this one point in the story where she's trying to convey that Bella is happy about something. I think she's just like, I don't know, had like a really good time with Edward or something.
Okay.
And she literally, I'm going to read it. I don't remember what page it's on, but I like took I
just love saying literally now because literally the best, literally the worst.
It means so much more on this podcast.
Yeah.
So it's like the next morning, I don't even remember at which point of the book this is, but something happened and she's happy, right? And so this is literally what, here I go again with literally, this is what Stephenie Meyer writes. I caught myself whistling while I was pulling the front part of my hair back into a barrette. And later again, as I skipped down the stairs, Charlie noticed. You're cheerful this morning, he commented. It's one of those things. And as somebody who like went to school and got my minor in creative writing, there's this whole thing about, yes, you show, you don't tell. Instead of just being like, so-and-so is happy. You like show us what happiness looks like. But her version of show versus tell is like the way that like a 5-year-old would do it. Like, can we honestly see this, however old she is, 15, 16-year-old, whistling and skipping down the stairs because she's so happy? It felt like a really young writer who is still trying to figure out how to convey emotions using really basic language and just this very simplistic style of writing. Like, I remember reading that, I just had to stop for a second and cry a little bit, and then I gathered myself and continued on. But I think that was like really difficult, and that style of writing is obviously throughout the book, and because of that, clearly she does know how to write in general, and she certainly does know how to craft good, solid characters. And you know, I think she's also a little too on the nose at certain points. Her writing, again, is so basic and straightforward. It lacks any sort of subtlety or depth. At one point at the beginning of the book, she is like Bella has just shown up, right, to Forks, Washington, and she's trying to get acclimated and acquainted. And actually, I think I have it
a
marked
note about it.
I think I have a note about it because it's me and I feel like a little teacher over here. But she literally says this. This is her getting ready to walk into the school on her first day. I can do this, I lied to myself feebly. No one was going to bite me. And I'm like, seriously? Really, Stephanie Meyer? Like, this is so painfully on the nose and obvious. And we get it. We get it.
It's about vampires.
Book about vampires. Like it made me feel dumber reading this book. Like, I felt in some ways like I was being talked down to.
Oh, goodness.
Like, at different points throughout it. All that to say, as we transition now to talk about characters, like, well, that same, go for it. What were you gonna say?
Before we go to characters, I just want to have, like, you know, not necessarily counter argument to it, but again, just thinking about like the other side of things.
Okay,
and
sure.
Who is this book made for?
It's made for adolescents.
Yes.
And I would be offended
Very
as a
young
16-year-old or 13-year-old reading this book and feeling like, you really think I'm that dumb that I can't figure it out? So you're going to just like spell it, like you're going to spoon feed it to me. Like, I'm glad I didn't read this as an adolescent, but I would have been like, honestly, a little offended.
That's hilarious. But it was intended for much younger audiences. And the reason why adults read it now is more about nostalgia and like thinking back. And I totally get it. It was very, very basic writing and not great. It was not great.
Well, because wait, so you read this originally as an adolescent, right?
Yes.
Like, how old were you?
I think I was around 19 or 20.
Oh, so you were like, okay, like a
young, but like, yeah. But oh shoot, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have interrupted earlier. You were like on your train of thought. You were saying it was written for younger people. And like, that's perhaps why the language.
And also what I wanted to say is just that I personally don't read for necessarily the writing. And I know that we are definitely different in that way. And I read for pure entertainment. Like, that is why I read. And that is why I love the books that I love. And if a book is boring to me, whether or not it's fantastic writing or really bad writing, it doesn't matter. I'm going to toss it away. I'm going to DNF that if it's boring to me.
But does bad writing make it less entertaining for you or no?
No, not always. This book, I don't think so. This book isn't like my favorite book, right? But I think it's a good place to start for us. But I just have a different relationship with books than you, I think. And so that is also another thing I think is important to keep in mind. Like, a book can be entertaining while being not so great written.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, yeah, I think we do have slightly different backgrounds.
That too,
to that,
absolutely.
Although I will agree with you, we've talked about this before. If a book is really beautifully written, but is pretty slow in terms of the pacing, I will check out. Or it'll just take me a really long time to get through. Like, I'm not going to be like, yes, let me get back to this book. So I think we're on the same page maybe in that regard. But yeah, I do appreciate a well-crafted sentence.
Sure. Yeah.
For sure. Especially since, yeah, I, studied writing in college. So I do come to writing with that background and experience. And so, yeah, for me, this book was, I think, then even more painful, right? Because not only was it just a stupid book, but it was like a poorly written, stupid book. So it was just like doubly awful. And I'm just still so like,
I'm so proud of you for making it through.
thank you. Actually, that I really needed to just acknowledging what a trial this was for me. Yeah. So
I want to hear your thoughts on the characters.
I mean, okay. Bella, I truly, and I'm not just like being facetious. I honestly don't understand Bella. Like, I don't understand what motivates her. I truly didn't feel like the way that she fell in love with Edward so quickly and also oddly, it just didn't seem earned. Like, dude, you've known him for like 3 seconds. You were really concerned about the fact that he could be this quote unquote monster / vampire. And I think her love for him, to me as an adult reading this book, came across as obsessive and unbalanced and neurotic and really terrifying for her. Like, it happened so suddenly. I know, like, oh my gosh, young love, and you just have all of these emotions, and they're suddenly there. But the intensity of her emotions and the fact that she was pretty quickly ready to literally end her life and become a vampire for him, it just, that in and of itself took me out of the whole story. I was like, this isn't, you were talking about how, and none of this is true. Like,
yeah,
this is so unbelievable. Like, this is so unbelievable. And yes, I get that it's like fantasy or
it is
whatever,
fantasy,
but like the speed in which the relationship progressed and also the way in which it progressed. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I felt like I was having whiplash or getting whiplash. I don't even know how to say that phrase, because literally in every conversation that Edward and Bella have throughout the course of the novel, they are in one moment, like, madly in love with each other and telling each other how great they are. And then the next minute they're pissed off at each other about one thing or another. Like, they're always flip-flopping back and forth, like, consistently.
Yes.
And it drove me crazy. And was also, as a reader, just like, it was so all over the place. And I'm like, this relationship is so unhealthy. It's so unhealthy, obviously, for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
Not least of which he's like literally like 80 years older than she is. So yeah, Bella just came across as this really passive, almost like blank slate character that was waiting for this man to come along and like give her life some sort of sense and purpose. And that is such problematic messaging, especially for, as you said, all of the adolescents who this book was written for.
Totally.
It's like so bad.
Kind of to get into some of your points about, and this isn't really like a argument. It's like not at all a counter argument, but it's just to kind of understand like fantasy, right? Where this is a fantasy book, right? Vampires don't actually exist as far as we know. And this, I also like rereading this book. I'm like, man, this is really not, it's less like, okay, the writing is very YA, but the messaging behind it is more like soft, dark romance.
I don't even know what that is.
You don't know dark romance?
I think it's soft dark romance.
I know, but it's just like, oh yeah, soft dark romance. Because dark romance is, I've never read dark romance because it freaks me the fuck out. Because it's literally about like typically men stalking these women and these women like falling in love with them. It is a whole genre that people are obsessed with. So
this is dark romance then.
So I think it's kind of soft dark romance. And not to like explain away any of those things, but people fucking love that shit. And so it's not my personal like favorite, but it's to kind of understand there is a world out there that people love it when the man in the book is like this stalker creep
Because
who
that's
makes
what
this woman
he
fall in love with
is.
her.
Like literally, like he literally creeps into her bedroom at night and
Totally,
fucking watches
absolutely,
her
yes.
sleep.
Yeah.
Like what and the fact, okay, at one point in the book, she
Oh.
says, since I'd come to Forks, it really seemed like my whole life was about him. And this
Yes.
idea that she literally has fixated solely on this boy
Yeah.
man,
So
and made, yeah, him the entire point of her existence, and ultimately endangers herself, her dad, her mom, right, in her attempts to like have this problematic, weird, creepy man. Like it's really concerning. And I think, like, if we shift then from Bella to the character of Edward, who I feel like Stephanie Myers really tries to, obviously, because he's, you know, one of the protagonists, like she tries to make him this sympathetic character. Like we're supposed to like Edward, like he's supposed to be like,
Totally.
you know, even though he's a vampire, he's really kind of supposed to be like this knight in shining armor. And because we're situated that way as readers in relationship to him, it's doubly problematic, because if you're being told by the author, like this is the good guy, right? This is the person who she's fallen in love with because, you know, he's kind of one of the hero, while at the same time having this hero character do really weird, creepy, stalkerish, assaulty things, that is so problematic, because it makes it that much harder for young readers to differentiate between what is good and healthy and what is bad when you're telling someone, hey, this is good, while they're doing things that are actually really awful.
Totally.
And
I like in a way agree. I agree with the fact that this is for young adults and that it's marketed to young people while having all of these problematic like themes throughout. But I also, on the other hand, there are reasons why like dark romance exists, actual dark romance. And I've heard from people who love dark romance that it's actually a way of them kind of healing through the trauma that they've experienced. And I personally don't go down that route because of my own experience, right? So I have the opposite effect of like people really enjoying and loving those books, those types of stories. I stay away from like violence against women and in books and movies. Like I try to stay away from that. And even though I do come in contact with them, they're very compelling stories to me. And I've never read dark romance, but I'm talking about things like I just read It Ends With Us, right? There was a lot of violence towards women in that book. And I was in a way like, it also helps me. I think it does. Like I could feel that with that book. It's just, it helped me kind of process some of the things that I've been through. And on the other side of it, she, in that book particularly, which is why it was more helpful for me, is that she chooses to like step away from that, right? In the end. In this book, obviously that's not what's happening, right? It's a fantasy book. I also wanted to like the trope of the age gap is there, like in fantasy, I feel like age gap doesn't really exist because
So
there's like there are other stories that like this is a 500-year-old Fae man with a 19-year-old girl. And it's like, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't even like,
no, it's gross.
Process. Like, it's just like, oh, they're both like, whatever. I don't even think about it really. And then in this story, although it's not said like explicitly, and I don't think throughout the entire series, I can't remember exactly, but this is a story of like fated mates, which is why I think it doesn't make sense in the how they fall in love with each other. It's just fated. And Stephanie Myers never like gets to that exactly, but that is that's a big trope in fantasy and romance.
What is the trope books. Is called what?
Fated mates.
And what does it mean exactly?
You're gonna hate this. It's so funny.
I already hate it.
So basically, fated mates is just that you are fated to be with a person. Okay. And there's like,
oh my gosh. I thought you were saying faded mates. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Like, I feel like slow fade, you're like moving in the opposite direction of the relationship.
no.
Okay.
So
Fated. Okay. Got it.
yes. Okay. And I think
Okay.
that this story is an example of that, because in the end, Bella does become a vampire, and she was always meant to be a vampire. And that's just her story and how Stephanie Myers decided to create this.
In case,
But
because people can't see this, I'm rolling my eyes so hard right now.
and I like Fated Mates isn't like, to me, I don't love it or hate it. Yeah.
You're
It's not one of my favorite tropes,
Okay.
but it is a common occurrence in fantasy books. And I think that's what Stephanie Myers was trying to get to with how they fell in love, because it was really just instantaneous. Like you're saying, doesn't make sense. I think that's why.
Okay, but
not necessarily that she was trying to do that. I think it is just kind of poor writing, but I think that's the reasoning that I make out of that.
Okay, so you're projecting something onto the story to try to make it better than it is.
Perhaps. I never said that this was an amazing story.
But you did like it. At least when you read it the first time.
Absolutely.
You were a fan. You were a Twilight fan.
You know, I will go back to that idea of kind of like this dark romance, because as a 19-year-old back in the day, I found myself in a problematic relationship. Mm-hmm. And the man was like almost 10 years older than me. Mm-hmm. And it was a situation that I can see in this book. And especially like in New Moon, where she just feels like absolutely nothing when he's left and is like a shell of her own person. Like I actually identified with that really deeply when I was going through those things. And I don't think this is not a like positive of the book by any means. And that's not what I'm trying to like say, but I did relate to it. And while I was going through that, I was like, oh, I guess this is a thing. But the problem with me relating to it at such a young age like that is like, oh yeah, there are also themes of, but you belong with that person. And so I do think
normalizes it.
Yeah, I do think as a young person, I was feeling that and hopeful that it wasn't all this pain and agony. And that's not what real life is like. Right. And so I do want to say that as well. In the end, as an adult in a healthy relationship right now, like I had no connection to the characters. And I was like, oh, this is not great. But I do want to say too, that it was a book that started my reading journey. That helped start my reading journey, you know? And so it wasn't all bad, Amanda.
I mean, I know that, and I think we might have mentioned this in our intro episode, or you might have mentioned it in our intro episode, that books like Harry Potter, books like the Twilight series were kind of a gateway for a lot of people to get into reading. And so like, I will give the Twilight books that, because I even remember when they came out when I was younger, that a lot of people who, again, were not big readers suddenly were reading these quite long, YA novels, because, you know, they were trending and they were interesting and had vampires and romance, all these things. So I that is one other small props I will give to the book. But yeah, I think going back to what you were just talking about, I think that one of the big issues with this book, and that's, I think, you know, come up more recently in dialogue and critiques and reviews of this book, is that it does kind of glorify and romanticize a really unhealthy, problematic relationship and makes it look desirable for young readers. And it's like, yeah, is this guy treating you this way? Or do you feel like a shell of yourself when he's not around? But like, that's not a bad thing at all. Like, it's
just your fated mates.
Yeah, exactly. It means you're just so in love with him and you're meant to be together, and you just need to like push through and persevere. And even though Bella and Edward don't really get physical in this book really at all, like there's like some kissing and, you know, a bit of very, very painful kissing, weird kissing, and like, you know, a bit of cuddling. But the other aspect of it being a problematic relationship is there are moments that I found unsettling and disturbing, like Edward's kind of physical, almost aggression towards Bella. And like, I remember it's near the beginning of the book still. And he's trying to like, I think, get her, into his car. And he physically drags her, right? Like grabs her. He was gripping a fistful of my jacket in one hand. And then over the course of this page to the next page, he literally physically just like hauls her ass into the car. And I remember stopping at that moment in the book and being like, I feel there's so much unease around this whole interaction. Like it feels he's not assaulting her, but it feels almost like pre-assault-y. And there are other moments in the book where, and he is, he's incredibly strong and incredibly fast and can easily physically overpower her. And I feel there's multiple moments in the book where he's just kind of like tossing her around and taking her wherever he wants to in a way that just felt so gross and aggressive and controlling. And just really did not sit well with me. And so I think there's also that physical element of him using, the fact that he is physically more dominant and stronger than Bella to kind of get her to do things either that she might not want to, or to do them, in a way that he wants them done or done quicker or whatever, that I was just like, it just made it feel like she was like this little rag doll in his hands. So he was just kind of manipulating as he pleased. And I did not like that. And again, I think if you're a younger reader reading this, you might see them like, oh my gosh, like that's how a guy's supposed to be. Like he's supposed to be like this super kind of physically dominant person that can just kind of toss you around whenever he wants. And but that's love, like.
Yeah. He also has an air of like, oh, I'm older, so I know what's best for you and your life. And maybe it's not even how he's older than her. It's just who he kind of is just, I know what's better for you. You don't want this life because your soul is going to be ruined. I know, like it was just interesting. Like all of the small details of how he decides things for her versus her getting the opportunity to make her own decision, essentially.
Right.
And then New Moon, the next book, which we won't be reading for the podcast.
Thank the freaking Lord.
You're welcome, Amanda. I just didn't find a reason to like go into all of the books because, it's just
because they're all the same and they're all horrible. It's just
we're going to say similar things about it. But ACOTAR, we are getting through all of those. So don't even worry.
Yeah, no, that's not happening. I will read the first one.
It is absolutely happening.
So insanely long. Like the last book is
you can't read the first book and not read the second book.
Trust me, I will have no trouble stopping.
Oh, trust me, we will. Everyone reading on our fantasy side, we will be going through ACOTAR. Now I lost my train of thought.
I also don't entirely remember what you were talking about.
I don't remember what I was talking about.
You were saying that something that happened in New Moon, and then you went off on a tangent about.
Yeah. So like he decides that he's going to leave her because he knows what's best. And then she suffers all of this, not, whatever, all of the other details aside, but he gets to decide her suffering and he gets to decide how her life plays out versus her. Yeah. And even when down the road, we've all seen the movies, like when she has the child, he very much opposes having the child and wants her to have an abortion. And she has to use somebody else to support her decision, to be a barrier between her and Edward. It's not a great dynamic.
No, at all. Like from day one, it's problematic. Maybe I would be more aligned with you if I had read this book as an adolescent or as a young adult and was in a different headspace, maybe. But I feel like I don't know. I want to say that inherently some part of me would be like, this feels like a little ick.
I think so. I don't know. I don't.
I don't know. I can't say obviously, but there's nothing about this where I would be like, oh my gosh, this is just like the cutest little love story ever. Like, if you're coming away with that, I think there might be other things you might want to
check in with.
Yeah.
I will say though that the movies are absolutely like some of my favorite movies to binge over and over again.
Oh
like I just, I do. It's a comfort thing. It's that and like
Mhm.
Pride and Prejudice for me.
Oh
I will
no, you
like
cannot even put those in the same sentence. That
they're
is so awful.
like comforting,
Yes, Pride
comforting.
and
They're
Prejudice
totally
is because
different.
it's a good movie.
Totally
Hmm.
different. When
Hmm.
Cesario and I, my husband, met, it was during the pandemic. And that's when I became obsessed with Pride and Prejudice.
Hmm.
And oh my God, I don't remember how many times I rewatched that movie.
It's so
And
good.
it was in the background, and he was like, "Why are we watching this again?" And yeah, he always teases me. I'm like, Pride and Prejudice is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, I
Oh well.
absolutely. We are on the same page about that. Twilight. Honestly, I mean, I guess I should disclose that even though I hated this book, I have seen all of the movies.
Yeah.
I mean, it was sort of a situation where I was trapped in a boarding house that I was living at in Australia. And this was back in the day. This is like
Okay, okay.
2011. They had an Apple TV and it
Uh-huh.
had like 10 movies that were like, I don't know, loaded onto it. I don't even remember how Apple TVs worked. And five of them were the Twilight movies.
Twilight.
So I remember like I was stuck at the boarding house during like a school break. All the kids were gone. And I
Yeah.
just sat there by myself and watched all the Twilight movies. And then I never watched them again
Wow.
because
Surprising.
they were so bad. So I did have a little bit of like Twilight knowledge prior to reading the book,
Yeah.
which yeah made me that much more adamant about why I didn't want to read it. But I survived. There are like other things I could say about this book, like the fact that there are conversations between, as I said before, the conversations between Bella and Edward
Hmm.
are so not only inane, but circular. And they literally have the same conversation at length at least 5 different times throughout the course of the book. And it drove me crazy because there was like, there's no progression in their relationship and like what was happening. They were like just having the same argument, having the same discussion, having the same conversation multiple times. And the other thing that drove me
Oh,
crazy that
Lordy.
was repeated throughout, and I think because I don't honestly remember the rest of the movies and I don't remember the rest of the books, but the fact that
Uh-huh.
literally every other sentence, Stephanie Myers like felt compelled to tell us just how clumsy Bella was. I'm like, we get it. Bella's super clumsy.
Well,
Got
she
it.
has no other
Golden.
personality traits.
Like
So what else was
it's
she supposed to do?
it was so frustrating. Like literally, I just started to like take note of every time she mentioned once again how clumsy. She's like she beat that point within an
Uh,
inch of its life. I'm like, we get it. Does it come up again in the story?
that's just who
Like,
she is until she becomes a vampire, I
and
think.
then
Like
she's
it's
not
just like,
clumsy anymore. Okay.
yeah.
Because I was like, it kept coming up. And then I was like, I knew that Bella became a vampire eventually. And I was like, does this tie in? Is this supposed to be meaningful? Because she keeps bringing this up. So she clearly wants us to like
Yeah.
know that Bella can't walk in a straight line on
I really
like,
don't know why. I mean, we could read into that though, I'm sure.
get it.
But yeah, the reason why she can't or he can't read her mind, right, is because that's hinting at her power later on as a vampire. But that's
Okay.
the only thing that I
Okay.
know
Okay.
is significant.
I'm glad you brought that up. So the other thing was like, yeah, why can't he read her mind?
Huh.
Do they ever explain that in the other books? Is it
So
just
yeah, so she has the ability to, she's what is it called? A shield. She's a shield. And
okay?
so she can not only shield herself, she finds out when she becomes a vampire, she can shield others and protect them from other people's powers. So that was kind of the
Okay.
hint of like, oh, yeah, she was meant to be a vampire. And
Oh
yeah,
my God. Oh my
fated mates.
God. That
Well,
drove
moving
me
on from
crazy.
Bella and
Okay.
Edward, I
Mm-hmm.
actually the thing that I wanted to talk
Oh
about too,
no.
which
Can we be done? Can we
I'm
please
actually
be
so
done?
sad that it wasn't in the movies. Or
Okay.
was it? I don't think it was.
I don't know.
But the whole backstory of Alice's. Do you remember? So James is the bad guy. But I think that
Yeah.
he was the one that knew her in her old life. And I
Yeah.
think, okay, so this says in 1920, after having been institutionalized by her family, an unknown vampire turned her to save her life from the relentless tracker, James. Later, oh, yes.
Oh,
Okay, okay.
yeah. So he
Because
was
James
trying.
saw her and was going to eat her or something.
Yes.
She was
And then,
led to the love of her life, Jasper, after receiving a vision of him, and the pair subsequently joined the peaceful coven of the Cullen
okay,
family. So
okay.
I thought it was James that changed her, but yeah, that makes more sense that it
Well,
was some
yeah,
other
because
vampire.
he's mad at the end
Yeah.
that she was the first one that kind of got away. And he was telling Bella this story because he's like, you're
Oh,
not gonna get away. Like I'm gonna, consume you. And that's why he mentions Alice, because he never kind of was able to get over the fact that she got away. She's the one that got away. I do remember that.
but they completely cut it out of the movies. And
Oh,
I was like, that's such a cool point. I just
mm-hmm,
thought that was like the most interesting thing to me in the book was her backstory and that she was in a psych ward. And that makes a lot of sense for the character Alice because she's kind of aloof a bit. And like the fact that she has like her power lends
mm-hmm,
itself to like being able to see the future. It's a
mm-hmm,
mental type of power, right? And
mm-hmm.
so that makes sense that she had some issues while she was human. Anyway, I just
Yeah.
thought that plot line was interesting, but didn't really go anywhere.
Does it come up in any of the other books at all? Like her backstory?
Honestly, I don't remember,
Okay.
but definitely not in the movies. Which is stupid.
Yeah. At that point, especially because it comes up at the end of the book, I was like so desperate to be done.
You're
I
just
was
like,
like,
I'm
oh
done with
great. I was like,
this.
yes. I
I
was like,
didn't
oh
hear
great,
this. I
Alice,
don't even know who
go.
Alice
Like
is.
I was like, let this be over, please, God. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't know that I have much more to say about this book aside from what I said already, and that I'm glad I never have to interact with it again. And
You're
I
welcome.
and that I'm I'm truly concerned that there are so many people still that think this is like an excellent book. Like I think what I'd like to do, I would love to sit down with one of those 5-star people and be like, hey,
Let
although
me into your
I
head.
guess we're going to hear in just a moment in our
What a
next
great segue.
what a great segue into our literally the best and literally the
Literally the
worst,
worst.
where we read to you 5-star and 1-star reviews of this book
Yes.
to further shore up the side that we are on. So Kelsey will
Further
obviously,
polarize
yes, further
the
polarize.
crowd.
So Kelsey's going to be reading the literally the
Uh,
best, the 5-star, a few funny and
yes.
interesting 5-star reviews, and then I will be enlightening us all with the truth of what this book is all about.
So I think last time we started with 5-star reviews, right?
I think we did. I think we started
Okay.
with the
We'll start
best.
with literally the best and then
Okay.
go to yours.
Okay.
Okay. So I have a few, a couple short and a few more longer. And so
Mm-hmm.
we'll start out. These are all from Goodreads and we're all 5-star reviews. And I'm so sorry if I mispronounce your name, but here we go. Farah? Farah? Probably the worst piece of literature I've ever read. 5 stars. Acknowledging that it's bad, but she fucking loved it.
But like, I want to know what her defense is. Like, I want specifics.
There's
What
no need for
exactly did
defense. That's
you
it.
love?
Period.
Like, I'm gonna count that review on my side. So that actually is 1 point for
Hilarious.
Chris when you did.
Paige says, death is peaceful, life is harder. I've never loved anything as much as I loved the Twilight series. No, that's not a joke. And yes, I mean it. There's just something about the ultimate comfort read that never gets old. I'm sure you have one too. But maybe you're lucky enough that the world doesn't think it's a guilty pleasure to read it over and over again like they do for mine. But enough of that. I think Stephanie Meyer is an absolute genius.
Oh,
She
God.
took vampire lore and she made it something completely different. Now,
Horrible.
it's almost impossible to think of vampires as only these vile, terrifying creatures of the dark because she made them sparkle. She
She
made them a part of the light. She made them a part of dreams and fairy tales. Edward Cullen is the light of my life because he doesn't exist simply in the dark, no matter how much he tell you he belongs there. And isn't that amazing?
No, no, I'm genuinely, like, truly deeply concerned about the author of this review. Also, what this book is comforting this weird problematic relationship you find comfort in.
It's
Oh
so
my gosh.
good. So good.
Whoa.
Again, difficult name. Kalila.
Okay.
This series, no matter how well written it is or isn't, is what made me dive headfirst into the world of books. So it will always be a 5-star read for me. Sorry, not sorry.
You should be very sorry. There are so many other books
not sorry. Rhonda, I know Goodreads tells me that this is my second time of reading this book, but let me tell you, I can't count the times I've read it. My guilty obsession. What can I say? This book, this entire series draws me in, and each time I read it, I fall in love that little bit more. I couldn't tell you why I love this book so much. I couldn't tell you why the characters are so addictive, no pun intended. And I don't ever want to stop feeling this way when I fall into the world of Twilight. It's a world that I can honestly say is an escape from reality. It literally lifts my soul.
I love how she continually said that she couldn't explain anything. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, because it doesn't make sense. Like,
she just is obsessed.
Your love for this book and this series like does not make sense. And you said it yourself. Oh my God.
Okay. This final one from Danielle. Danielle, sorry. This is the first time I've reread this book. It's definitely different feels second time around. Not the greatest writing, lots of story holes that don't add up, but honestly, it's got its own home in vampire culture and is a classic in that sense. I'm personally still a fan.
This is like, what is that phenomenon where like a group of people all have like the same delusion?
There is a word for that. Oh my gosh. We're going to find out later.
This collective psychosis. I don't even know, but I feel like that's what's happening. Honestly, you know what? All of those reviews make me think of a cult. It's like they all know something is slightly off and something is wrong, but they just can't help themselves. And they're still going to just follow Stephanie Meyer like to the edge of a cliff and go over it with her. Like
yeah, we didn't even get to the religious like undertones of everything.
That is true.
So sad.
That is true. I mean, it's not sad. I mean, I think like in a nutshell, like we're definitely looking at kind of these very traditional gender roles for sure. Mm-hmm. I think, I mean, even the fact that we see when Bella moves in with her dad, her kind of taking on the role of like the woman at the house and like cooking the meals and cleaning and taking care of him because like he's so incapable of doing any of that on his own.
Yeah. And that the woman herself is just selfless because she moves from Arizona where she was happy with her mom to please her mom. And then she comes to Forks and is like, oh, my dad actually needs me too. Great.
And then like, now Edward needs me and I need him and I will do whatever it takes to kind of conform myself and shape myself into like whatever he needs me to be or I need to be with him. Like, she has no identity. Like she has no, aside from being clumsy, she has no identity. Like it's awful.
And for some reason has all the boys after her.
Oh my gosh, that was actually one of the other notes I wrote down. I was like, literally, why is every single man in this high school obsessed with her? Like
to the school. That's all that I read into it. I don't know.
It was just weird because she seems pretty unassuming and somehow like literally every boy in the school is like falling all over themselves to get to her.
Including Edward Cullen.
And
interesting too, though, because part of like the religious undertones, they were both virgins when they got together. Even Edward.
Oh, I guess I don't know for this. He never actually says that he is. Because he was no, I mean he gets sick when he's like 17, but we don't, I mean he doesn't actually talk about whether or not he was with anyone before that.
Maybe I'm taking that from another book or something, but I'm pretty positive.
Oh, I mean it wouldn't surprise me.
Why don't you start with our 1-star read?
So we're gonna start with Claire Richardson, who says, in short, the writing mechanics are atrocious. The dialogue is stilted and absolutely wretched. The characterization is bad, loose, jumpy, and the progression is occasionally senseless. The main characters themselves are not compelling, selfish, shallow, lacking the deep thought that comes with true passion and love, and instead leaping recklessly into stupid and deadly situations when anyone with a brain could see 60 other possibilities that should have been tried first. I cannot express my disgust for the relationship between Edward and Bella. It's not romance, it's not passion, it's not love. It is selfish idiocy at best. Bella as a character is insufferable. Her self-sacrificing streak is not compassion, it's sheer stupidity. It's hormones. It's a bad example for the teenage girls who read it. Bella's whole life is tied up in her boyfriend. She has no goals, passions, ambitions, or dreams besides wanting to be with Edward, who could kill her.
And being a vampire.
And being a vampire. Like, thank you, Claire Richardson, for pretty much summarizing in two little paragraphs my entire opinion about this book. And then my very favorite 1-star review from a user who simply is called Human. All they wrote was vomits aggressively. And there you have it. That is the reaction.
Wait, vomits? Like,
yes. So they literally just put inside of 2 asterisks, vomits aggressively. And
I wonder if people like that
is the appropriate response to this book.
Have actually read the entire book, or did they stop at some point?
Probably, you know because they were vomiting aggressively because it's so atrocious. But I really appreciate that.
Nice job.
Thanks.
I think, it was really intentional for us to start with 2 books that we didn't exactly have like super strong feelings about. I didn't feel deeply in love with Twilight, and you didn't feel deeply in love with None of This Is True. But as we continue on, we're definitely going to get into some books that we absolutely love. Yes. And I could not wait when you were saying how their conversation was repetitive, and you were like, and there was no like relationship progress. That immediately made me think of Powerless and Reckless. And we are so 100% reading those. And I love them. I absolutely love them. And you're going to hate the living shit out of them. And it's going to be fantastic.
I feel like I so far have been so much nicer to you. If we're comparing None of This Is True to Twilight, I definitely had the more painful and the longer read as well. I just want to point that out to everyone. But before we wrap up, that we do have to do final recommendations. So Kelsey, would you recommend Twilight?
Wait, did we do that for None of This Is True?
We absolutely did.
I feel like I only did that.
No, I think we both did it. We definitely both did it.
Did we?
If we didn't, we're doing it now. So as the person who recommended this book and forced me to read it, what is your final recommendation? Should folks go out and read Twilight if they've never read it before?
I think I'm going to have to say no.
I feel like
because I can't because it is for young adults. Like, I can't in my good heart, like, recommend this to a child. Young person. But it is like that opening door of fantasy. You know what? There are better opening door fantasy books out there than Twilight, I will say.
Yeah.
So I will say I'm gonna say no.
I feel so justified, I think is the word I'm looking for in my opinion.
Not that I didn't enjoy them at a time. But now as an adult, I have to say that in good faith.
You've seen the light. You've seen Edward in sunlight. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I think that does it for us with this book. Thank goodness.
You have to do your recommendation. What are you talking about?
Honestly, I feel like, okay, if you could not tell, gentle reader, if you could not tell.
Dear gentle reader.
I had to get in some Bridgerton. Okay. Yeah, I absolutely do not recommend this book. Like, shocker, like, surprise, twist ending. Amanda does not recommend this book. Yeah, if you are looking to get into reading again or for the first time,
read ACOTAR.
Okay. Let's go. Let's just slow your roll. I would say, there are other books. I mean, just Harry Potter, right? If you want to get into fantasy, you want to ease your way back into reading, just pick up Harry Potter. I know J.K. Rowling is like a problematic thing, but at least the books are good. Like Twilight and Harry Potter, there's for me no comparison. Like they don't even inhabit the same universe. So don't read this book. That's all I have to say.
People are gonna be mad at us.
About what?
Because I couldn't defend Twilight well.
Because it is indefensible. This is
I don't agree. I don't fully agree because there are people out there that absolutely love this book. So I feel like my following is going to be
take a blow. It's going to take a blow.
I'm sorry, you guys. There are other books that I absolutely adore and love that I'm going to fight Amanda for. But this one is just not it. I'm sorry.
It's not it. Like Twilight is not it. And I'm saying that to all the 2 million plus people out there. It's not it. And I feel no shame saying that. Anyhow, as we wrap things up, we do want to remind folks once again where you can find us on socials. So if you'd like to watch this episode instead of listening to it, we're very expressive. So if you want to see all of the crazy things happening,
I feel like a wild child. I'm like constantly sticking out my tongue and like making faces at you.
I'm just moving all the time.
It's just my like energy. Like I'm like, eh.
So you can watch us on YouTube at Lit Vibes Only Podcast. You can check us out on TikTok at Lit Vibes Only Podcast and on Instagram at Lit Vibes Only _podcast. And as always, this is a community endeavor. So we want to hear from you. We want to interact with you. So if you did like this book and are enraged by how this episode went, we absolutely want to hear from you. And I think at some point, I feel like once we start to get enough feedback, we should definitely start incorporating like our listeners' like responses and
that'd be great
for sure to broaden the conversation.
The last thing that I want to say too is that we are a very brand new podcast and we need reviews. So if you are loving the show, please, please, please go to where you find your podcast, whether that's Spotify, Apple, what have you, and give us a review. And Amanda, do you want to tell them what the 51st reviews are going to get?
Yes. So if you are one of the first 50 people to leave us a review, you are going to get a limited edition Lit Vibes Only sticker that you can put on your water bottle, your laptop, your car, wherever. So please get those reviews in and we will send you a really cute sticker. It's our logo. It's our cute little logo.
It's very cute.
So be sure to do that. We'd love to hear from you and we'd really appreciate those reviews.
I think we also have to say it can't just be a review. It has to be a good review. So if you leave us a 1-star review,
you're not getting
you're not getting a sticker. I think we definitely have to put that out there.
That's true. Although I feel like, leave us a good review, but also like leave us your thoughts and things like you'd love to see from us, like in the future, if you agree or disagree with our DM us, but if you agree or disagree with our takes on things, be nice. Please be nice.
Coolio. We'll see you next Monday.
See you next Monday.